Hello, this is Montgomery County Auditor Carl Keith, and we're back here for another episode of Auds and Ends, which is a monthly program sponsored by the Montgomery County Auditor's Office, where we speak with people from the community and who have play major roles and have different responsibilities. And it's an opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about them, an opportunity for us to learn what they do and how they impact the people here living in Montgomery County. And so today we're very honored to have the Honorable Mayor of Dayton, Jeffrey Mims, with us today. Jeff, thank you for joining us. So it doesn't get any bigger than the Mayor of Dayton, right? It doesn't get any bigger than the Mayor of Dayton. And again, I've known Jeff for a long time through a number of different roles. And so, Jeff, why don't we start out by just talking a little bit about your career? I guess, I didn't know, when I first met you, you were working for Dayton Public Schools. You were probably their, with the OEA, you were probably their lobbyist or something. Yep. That's probably the first time I met you, but you had a distinguished career as a teacher and a coach. So I don't know if you want to talk too much about that, but I know this. There's seldom do I run into people in Dayton who won't tell me, "Oh yeah, Jeff Mims used to be my coach," or "Jeff Mims used to be my teacher."
It's special. I tell you. I mean, still bringing tears of joy to my eye when I think about so many of those young people that whose parents trusted me with them. Mm-hmm. In terms of just coaching, teaching. I taught boys soccer and girls track. Now, girls track thing was a bit of a challenge. I mean, I had to wind up calling some parents. Hey, look, he was separated. But it's just a blessing in terms of doing that.
And I think it's interesting too when you refer to it. You don't say I coached them. You said I taught them.
Yep.
I taught them.
Yep. Yeah. Because I was blessed to be able to have the thought process that the soccer field and the track was an extension of my classroom. Mm-hmm. And so working with them to help them, first of all, understand that they had value. They had talent. And before we even began to talk about soccer or track, we talked about their hobbies, their interests, their zodiac sign, their favorite colors. They had to memorize everybody on the team, their names, how many brothers and sisters you have, and those things.
You're building character.
Right, and it was a blessing. And I didn't know, that I was doing that. I just had been involved in something somewhere. They had done that process with some adults and some of this DCA work that I was doing with OEA and with NEA. And I just remember how good I felt in terms of being able to share some things and being able to hear some things, and also seeing how many people in that room had similar experiences or similar characteristics, or how many of us had the same favorite color. People understand my favorite color is red, and I think almost everybody in Ohio knows that. But the issue is that you see and develop partnerships and relationships just based upon something sometimes that's real simple. And then therefore, as you move forward to the next level, then you have this bond that was created just simply by sharing some of the kinds of things that you have in common.
So so you were active in the union, and you were president of Dayton
6 times.
You were president 6 times of DEA. Is that DEA?
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Then you ran for the state school board. Is that?
Well, it's in this.
Is that kind of the progression there?
This order. Once I came back from Vietnam, I worked. I was a custodian at Frigidaire. No. Punch press operator at Frigidaire, but I was custodian at McCall's before I went to Frigidaire. Then I went to school at Central State for a year, and then I got into this program the next year, working as a teacher's aide in the day, and then going to school in the evening. It was one of these model cities programs that was sponsored by President Johnson at the time. Johnson's War on Poverty. And so being involved in that process. Actually, I was supposed to be designing cars for General Motors. My major was industrial technology, art design, and I picked up educational classes when I was in that program as a teacher's aide. And I didn't go to Michigan in January of '73 because it was 25 below zero in Warren, Michigan. Okay. And the school system asked me about teaching after I finished my substitute job over at Highview School from January to June. And I called the folks in at GM and said, "Can I come in June?" And they said yes. And so I said, okay. So I started working DPS at Highview, teaching 8th grade, not 8th grade, but kindergarten through 8th grade. And I got hooked on education.
So you're an elementary teacher
First,
at
Yeah.
first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then when the Science Center program started, the Dayton's first DSEG program, I taught at Highview. I taught art in relationship to science.
Okay.
And so I did that for 3 years. And then I asked to go to Belmont when we did system-wide DSEG in 1976. And the blessing is that those 3 years that I taught elementary, I taught different kids from each school, that I had taught 80% of the kids in the district.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
Well, those are the ones I run into, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So then going to high school at Belmont, then again it was easy to interact with them because so many of them had known me for 2-3 years prior to, and we had developed these great relationships.
Yeah. So, but you eventually get elected to the state school. Were you on the state school board before you were on the local school board? No, you were on this local school board.
Local school board
first.
So as I left being union president, I went to the state as a lobbyist.
Right.
First. With
And
OEA.
that's when I first met
Right,
you. I
OEA
think.
and NEA. And then I was there for 2 years, and I let the superintendent and some business people, I know Ron Buzzick, Joan Pettiford, as well as Franklin Smith, they taught me into coming back and working with this New Futures project, that $20 million grant that we had gotten from the Annie Casey Foundation. And so then we were working with at-risk youth. And we put my office at the time over at the worst school, which is Wilbur Wright. So I had Wilbur Wright, Roth, and Kaiser. And so I was over that program and dealing with those young people. And did that program, grade 7th and 8th. I did that program for 5 years. And then the superintendent asked me to be the lobbyist. This time, James Williams was the superintendent.
Okay.
And so
Remember
I did that.
Williams. Mm-hmm.
I did spend a little bit of time, about 3-4 weeks, working in Washington, D.C. with Franklin Smith in the Labor Relations Department, as the director of that.
Yeah.
And before I came back to Dayton.
Okay.
So, but Dayton's been the hardest. So then once we finished that program, I was a lobbyist for DPS for 25 years. Then when I retired, then I went to the Dayton School Board.
Okay.
Elected there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a school board member and served as president of the school board.
Yes, sir.
And those were challenging times.
Challenging times, but some good times because we were able to move some things, especially with this whole school facilities project.
Were you on the school board when they passed the levy to build the new schools?
I was working then because I was a lobbyist.
Okay.
That was the lead lobbyist
Okay.
for that bill to build on those schools.
Okay.
But we had, she said, the school system had finished about 95% of that project.
Okay.
Before I got elected to the board.
Okay.
And so it was sort of easy, but we did a lot of good stuff then because we built Belmont High School. Mm-hmm. Yeah, by using local labor and minority labor, and Belmont High School, which is twice the size of Dunbar, cost us the same money because we used local labor.
That's okay.
The local labor came in under bid. They built it better, and they built it quicker.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that so as you know, I just live a couple of blocks away from Belmont High School, so I'm real familiar with that project.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
What a great facility that is, and great facility for the neighborhood too.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
yeah.
And of course, you know what kind of impact it has in the neighborhood every day if you're there between 3 and 4 o'clock, because when they empty the school out into the street, there's a lot of kids going to that school.
See young people out there expressing themselves.
Yeah. So you end up going to state school board.
Yep.
Right after that, and then you ended up coming back to Dayton to run for Dayton City Commission.
Yes, sir.
And you were Dayton City Commission for 2 terms?
Yes.
2 terms.
Yep.
So how was being on the Dayton City Commission compared to being on the Dayton School Board?
Well, there's some similarities.
Uh-huh.
Dayton School Board was probably one of the better jobs, best jobs I've had. I mean, all of these have been good. The State School Board, I put, is probably one of the worst jobs because you had members there. I had to constantly remind some of the school board members that we took the same oath. Because some of their concepts were not necessarily in line.
Well, schools in Ohio,
purpose.
I don't know if you want to comment on this, but schools in Ohio, it's pretty much like counties in Ohio and cities in Ohio.
Yep.
You've got some big urban centers like Dayton would be, and then you've got all this rural area, and so the issues are different, right?
Right.
And same thing with the schools, same with the county, same with the city.
Yeah.
It's a very diverse state, so we don't always have the same issues.
Well, some of the issues there could be the same,
Okay.
depending on how you would interpret them. Because many times you would ask an educator, "What's the purpose of education?" and they will say to use test scores or graduation rates, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the purpose of education is to create conditions for young people to experience a wide variety of opportunities, program, curriculum that allows them to make a choice with regards to what set of those skills that they've learned that they want to use to make their contribution to society. So whether you go to college, you go to the military, you go to a vocational field, you go to the world of work, that's our job, to prepare them to be able to make those choices of doing that type of function, to be able to make their contribution, like I said, to the community. Because I'm been asked often, why are you so focused on education? As a mayor, the day after graduation, if you're not going to college, if you're not going to the military, and you don't have a job, whose problem are you? You're the city's problem. Because you're draining great social resources that we have for people of need, because you fall into that category. You may have other responsibilities in terms of children, other relationships that you have, and you are taking those resources to a point where it's almost sometimes at a breaking point, creating problems sometimes for police. And that's why, as we look at these issues, when I say it that way, people are really clear that, oh man, I never understood it that way. I never saw it that way. So when you look at the goal now, and President Biden, when I was in Washington, D.C. last week, he overemphasized the need for us to do more vocational work, to do more work in terms of developmental programs that give kids and young people more partnership programs that are associated with education and with the world of work, with manufacturing. The Sierra Nevada hangar that we have now at the airport will put more and more of our young people in a position where they can work and make $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year in terms of being an aircraft mechanic with no college debt. So there are different things for us to look at in terms of how we improve the quality of life in this community.
So you've been on the city commission as a commissioner and now as mayor. You're in your first term as mayor,
sir.
right? Your first term as mayor. And you've served the city, again, from a variety of point of views. But while you've been on the city commission, been challenging times. I mean, we've gone through a recession, we've gone through foreclosure crisis, we've gone through an opioid crisis, we've had, the challenges from the pandemic and the tornado and the Oregon district shooting. There's some very difficult, challenging times. Reflections on that?
Man.
I know that's a lot.
And what I'll say is that each time we had a crisis, we got stronger and stronger. People like yourself, business community, we looked around, we talked to different people, the Chamber, Dayton Development Coalition, Downtown Business Partnership, the social service groups. Every time we had a big challenge, we came together to figure out how to deal with it. And each time we got stronger and stronger as a community. And it sort of helped us move even more quickly, if you will, in the right direction in terms of addressing that. The situation, for example, with George Floyd, that situation caused us to take another step back and look at how can we get ahead of these challenges. How can we do a better job in Dayton so that we do not wind up like Minneapolis
with that type of situation,
individuals of that nature. So being a part of the city commission, great mayor Nan Whaley, in terms of helping being a part of a team and having a very strong team, we were able to come up with the kinds of things that allowed us to show strong leadership in that space. And being a recipient now of the All-American City Award, because of that work that we did in that process, which also allowed us to bring more people together who had not sat and talked to each other before. And having the police, for example, sit down and talking with the president of the new Black Panther Party, and understand the challenges that both have, and to see them come out now so often in partnership about the kinds of things that we need to do as far as making this city safe and keeping it safe.
Yeah. Now, so one of the things is in my role as county auditor, of course, I've had to work with the city closely on housing issues and property issues around, and again, going through the period during the recession and the housing crisis, we saw property values in the city just decline, rapidly, and now as we see the market come back gangbusters, it's just scary sometimes. What some of the things we're seeing now, but the city has gone through still growing pains, right? I tell people when we were going through the foreclosure crisis, I said you have to remember, in the '60s and the '70s, Dayton had 100,000 more people than they do now.
Excellent point. I mean, actually more than we used to have 250,000 people
Right.
during that time.
Yeah.
And so we had a housing stock for 250,000 people.
Correct.
Now we have 141,000 people. And so we have these excess properties, blighted properties across the city.
They've been abandoned
or abandoned, and hard in some cases to find the owners of those spaces, etc. So the ARPA dollars gave us a great opportunity to, first of all, go to the community. And this is something that we were one of the few cities in the nation to take this approach. Most city governments and county governments decided they already had a list of what they want to do, so they just need money. So we just plug these dollars into this list of things. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you want to do. Trying to increase the confidence of people who lived in the community along with city government and have them feel like we listened to them about what they saw as their priorities is a step that we took as well. And so by doing so, going around the community and holding, I think, 6 or 7 meetings and asking them what they want you, what do you want to do with this money? And so the number one vehicle was tearing down these blighted houses and vacant homes and things of that nature. And so that's how why we made that as our number one priority. And so the vacant properties that we have, I think we look at where we are, maybe about 1,400. And so we had dollars in there to maybe tear down about 900, maybe 1,000 of those properties in that space. And then going through that process is going to be extremely rewarding for this city and for the individuals and people who live in those neighborhoods.
And people don't really realize how important that is sometimes.
Yeah, because I think a lot of them, and you mentioned again, foreclosure crisis. During the time frame, 2006 to 2009, that time frame, Montgomery County, Ohio, was number 1 in the nation in terms of foreclosure crisis.
Yeah.
We were number 1 in the nation in terms of predatory lending.
Yes.
Which led to that. And
long before there was a recession.
Right.
We were dealing with those issues here in this community long before there was a recession.
Right, exactly. And so sometimes when you're trying to explain to individuals how we got into the situation, it's not because of the current leaders that we have in the city of Dayton right now. It has nothing to do with them. The current leaders of downtown had nothing to do with them. These things happened, 2 or 3 decades ago.
Yep.
That caused
that were set in motion.
Yeah. Caused us to have to deal with them. So I'm just happy to be a part of the city commission, to be mayor at a time when we continue the growth that we've had over the last 8 years. Our median income has increased. I mean, we're like $28,000 now at the 34.5. Now that's not great, but what it does recognize is the fact that we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you make a great point about the housing stock. Again, working in the auditor's office, as we were looking at it, it's an aging housing stock. A lot of these homes were built after World War II, and so back in the 1950s, they're 1,000 square feet, maybe two bedrooms, 1 bath, up.
Yep.
And they're just not marketable, and so in today's culture,
right.
And so they sit empty, and then they get abandoned. They become eyesores. They become magnets for crime and all kinds of health issues and all kinds of things. And so removing them from the landscape, as painful as that is,
right.
and as expensive as it is, it really helps the community. It builds property value for the people living next door that are trying to maintain their property and have a good life themselves, quality of life themselves, but it's painful.
Yeah,
it's a painful experience.
And there's no money specifically in the general budget if you will, for dealing with that. So
Oh, yeah.
the dollars to deal with those blighted properties had to be generated from HUD, from grants, different combinations of sources that we're using to deal with that. That's why it was so important for us to take this opportunity to respond to what the citizens are saying they wanted relative to vacant and blighted properties. And so it just fits right in to be the cornerstone of our approach to benefiting this community by using those dollars.
So, what would you say then is if I was to ask you, what is your number one priority as mayor? What would you say?
Well, people understand that. They know me. They know I've been involved in education.
Right.
And again, my eyes begin to start watering up because kids represent 20% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. And the more we increase these opportunities for our young people to move into the world of work, we stand the best chance of breaking that cycle of generational poverty. And when we break that cycle in terms of generational poverty, we begin to move our city more towards being a middle-class city and the values associated with that to make Dayton the best place for someone to want to live, be educated, work, play, raise a family, and grow old. And those things, again, are the values that middle-class cities have. And when we have more and more citizens in Dayton who see that vision, who would like to see their kids or their grandkids move into that space, as we get a little bit more gray hair and et cetera ourselves, I think the pride of any family is to see their children do better than them, and when they see
Sure.
them moving in that space.
Mm-hmm.
It also, in combination with that process, provides a vehicle now for more individuals to own their own business, for more individuals to be able to give jobs to other individuals. It creates a better business atmosphere because we have more and more of the businesses who are making contributions into the city of Dayton. I mean, since 2010, we've had probably about maybe $3.5 billion that has been invested in downtown Dayton.
Downtown, yes.
Since the last 10 years, just $1 billion in terms of investments in downtown Dayton. And so when you see those kinds of things happening, the arcade being transformative in terms of getting and generating more interest in the city, it gave us the whole situation with the Levitt Center, free entertainment downtown over the weekends, and we're one of 15 cities in the nation to have a Levitt Center. So when I talk about my vision, it's making Dayton the best place for someone to live, work, play, be educated, grow old, and raise a family. Maybe in that we switched the last two. But the aspect of that whole process then causes more people to want to move back to Dayton.
Sure.
And so that's happening a lot as well. Some of those ladies who are involved in that 6888 kitchen, for example, have moved back to Dayton. And they're doing great work in terms of that space. 3 African-American females who were beneficiaries of that ARPA grant money, and they've gained some additional partnerships and making some things happen from that space. And naming it after a Dayton icon, Charity Early, that 6888, which was a squadron that she had been in charge of when she was in the Army, being the first African-American officer in the United States Army, female officer. And so, again, it gives us so many opportunities to build on these great legacies of Dayton, and you touching so many of the bases and making so many people happy. So help me get more people involved here, get more people involved in Air Camp, getting the schools to help additional partnerships with us, to have, I look at medical magnets, I look at engineering magnets, I look at things that we can do that will touch so many bases because it increases, again, the number of young people who have options about how they want to make their contribution to Dayton.
Well, you're a busy guy, and you've got big visions. You see a big picture, and you probably always have throughout your career. I know I saw recently you were at the White House for meeting with some other mayors from across the United States.
We have 260 mayors there.
Yeah. So you're always on the go and always looking to improve the things here in Dayton. So, do you get any time to play golf?
Not as much. And my handicap is suffering. So I try to get out. One of the places I take a lesson once a week.
Okay.
And the swing, so I keep the swing tuned up.
Oh. Okay.
Because I get these vultures and sharks still out there waiting for me.
Well, so I've played golf with the mayor before, and I didn't know that he needed any lessons. Let me just tell you that. So maybe that's what I need. Maybe that's what I need.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, I want to thank you for taking time to spend with us today. And you've had a fascinating career. You have a fascinating life, even now, and a great vision for the city and for the people who live here, and particularly for the young people that live here. And I think it's very commendable. So I want to thank you. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for being with us.
Go
ahead.
Because I know sometimes we get a little angry at you. So our success causes sometimes the value of our property to increase. So when we those tax assessments, right? There go call again.
Yeah,
But it's a good problem to have.
I am in that kind of I used to be in the state auditor's office, and the same thing. Whenever I'd go to do an audit in somebody's office or anything, there was one particular treasurer around the state that I audited, and as soon as he'd see me walk in the door, he'd just turn around and go, "Oh no, it's you again." And even our weights and measures guys get a little of that from so. We're in a role where we have to make some tough decisions sometimes, but we try to do it in a way where we try to involve people in the process as much as we can, and you know how important that is, and just like you were talking about the funding, trying to get input from people, and so that's what we try to do. But the market is what it is.
Oh yeah,
and it's crazy right now. It's been a frenzy here recently, and. So we'll have some interesting days ahead dealing with property values, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I want to say, because I know we touched upon a lot of things from a successful perspective, and I know we still have a lot of work to do. And the aspect of some of those neighborhoods who have not benefited yet. The fact that we're increasing the number of businesses in the city of Dayton. We're increasing the number of opportunities opening restaurants. We've had more ribbon cuttings this past year than I can remember any time in the past. I would just say to try to be patient. I know it's hard because some of you have been in situations for a long time where you have not seen the kind of progress in your respective community that you would like to see. Try to be patient and try to help us as we deal with these other issues. And I just say that we're coming.
Yeah.
We're coming to your neighborhood. We're coming to your spaces, your place of work, to try to make things better.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you for being our guest. Appreciate it. And that'll wrap us up for this month's issue of Odds and Ends. Thank you again.
All right.